Hi guys, welcome to the another episode of Sit Talks. Today I have for you a very interesting guest, Mr. Suman Dubey, the author of The Fixer. This is the book, and I will just be adding him to the live session. We'll just have him here. Hi Asim, we are just beginning. Hi guys, we are just starting. Yeah, Suman sir is here. I will just. Hi sir, hi.
Hi Siddhant, how are you?
I am fine. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks. Thanks for having me here.
It's a pleasure hosting you for this session. So, am I audible and visible?
Yes, absolutely. Loud and clear. Am I?
Great. Yeah, you are visible
Okay,
perfectly
good.
and audible as well. Great. So, we can start the session if it's fine.
Yeah, let's
So,
start.
there are people still joining in. Yeah. So, I'll just introduce you. On this episode of Sit Talks, I have with me Mr. Suman Dubey, who's an author and an entrepreneur who has studied at Cornell and has worked in Silicon Valley. In his career spanning 20 years, he has experimented with five different career options across nine industries and 12 global cities. He has a varied exposure and perspective from his wanderings. He is finally settled in Bombay, where he now pursues his favorite hobbies, which is writing and making gourmet coffee. And we will get to both of them. But today we are here to talk about his book, The Fixer, which is a fictionalized account of a match fixing, but it's a bit more than that as well,
Right, right.
as we'll discover as we start discussing. So, the first question I wanted to know is how has your writing journey been? How did this start and how it has been till now?
Yes. I actually had no idea that I'll ever be a writer or be able to finish a book because my background was in technology. I was working in Silicon Valley, and then I went for my MBA, majored in finance and strategy. Did a couple of startups after that back in India. Did management consulting. Uh, so uh, I never really thought that I would be a writer. Of course, just like anybody else, I would write journals and write down my thoughts and things like that, which a lot of people do. But there was no expectation that this is going to lead to anything. But what happened was that over time, as you progress with life, you really discover more and more about yourself. And one of the things that I noticed about myself, and others had pointed out as well, that I was very, very interested in people when they would tell me their stories. If someone wants to share an incident or something that they felt, I would be interested, and I am perceptive as well. I would observe people and things, and in my head play the situation in a sense that what can be a background to this, and it used to be fun, thing to do just for your own entertainment. Finally, all these observations and all these ideas just became so much to hold in the head that you thought that I thought that I should write it down. And again, had no idea I'll be able to finish the book. I just started writing, and from there it went. And my wife supported me a lot during this journey. And once the book was over, then I thought that, yeah, maybe this is something that can be used and can be taken to people outside.
Right. Uh, when I read The Fixer, it has a very interesting storyline, which on the surface you can say that it's a book about cricket, but then there is business, there is family. So how difficult was it to actually craft this entire plot?
Uh, uh, Both easy and difficult, and I'll tell you it's counterintuitive to look at it this way. But what happened was that, as you rightly pointed out, there is much more in this book than cricket. And originally, I never intended it to be a cricket story. It was not in my mind at all. It started with a quote that I had read many years ago. Oscar Wilde, the famous Irish novelist, he had written that in one of his plays that when the gods wish to punish us, they answer our prayers. It is a very counterintuitive quote because
Right.
we look at wish fulfillment, divine wish fulfillment as a happy occasion. How can something getting fulfilled, a wish getting fulfilled, be a source for misery? But here he's saying that it's God's punishment that your wish is getting fulfilled. Actually, this quote is about aspirational regret. That we imagine things, we desire for things, and when we finally get there, finally when we achieve those, we might find that this is not exactly what I was looking for. And from there, a new journey starts in terms of you, and you can see it in my life as well in terms of so many career changes and so many different cities and topsy-turvy and things like that. It is born out of that constant state of self-discovery that you think that, oh, this is where I'm going to, and this is what I was born to do, and then you get there and you find out, no, this is not matching, and so this quote really stayed with me, and I could relate to what was going on in my life as well. And eventually, when I wanted to write a book, I needed a character who had failed in midlife and had no way of resurrecting his career in its current form. And only a
Right.
sports person fits this bill because everyone else can restart their career. We have all seen senior citizens becoming entrepreneurs, and our politicians never retire. Only they keep on
Correct.
reinventing
Correct.
themselves. But only a sportsman, from a perspective of them playing the game, they can only play till a particular age. And I really needed that character to be able to fit it into a story. And so once I decided it's going to be about a sports person, cricket is the game that I know the most. I played it all the way till university. And thus I chose cricket, and intended to make it a story of somebody who has failed and now is desperate for redemption. And from that desperation comes the story of the compromises and he makes and the situations he gets through, only to get to the end and realize that his whole desperation and whatever he was trying to achieve was totally misplaced. So that's
Correct.
where it came from, basically.
Right. This is actually an interesting concept, merging and mixing three completely alien concepts into one. That's actually interesting, and especially when we see Neil's character, we actually see that it's actually happening. And that the first scene of the book is very powerful when the thing in the stadium happens. It actually sets the stage for everything that comes into the book later.
That's true,
So
and
I think that was a very
that's where I
powerful
was.
scene for me.
Yes, right. And that's why I was saying it's both easy and difficult in a sense that once I decided that this is a personal story in a way, and the cricket comes later, that's the easier part. The difficult part is, of course, then to mix up the cricket and the family business and the personal story and the love angle and all of that, and start it off in a way that the readers start caring for my character right from the beginning. Because I'm telling you, I mean, I've been a very big avid reader all my life, but I know even I can't read as much, and I know others are not reading as much as they want, and so I I, I approach my writing with an exceptionally deep respect for my readers' time. I know they are giving me time when they could be watching Netflix or doing Facebook or watching something else, and so I've got limited scope in terms of time, and thus I wanted to uh, interest the reader very early in the game, and a starting scene from where you pretty much understand what this person's goal is unambiguously, and deliver the promise in the story that, okay, here in the first chapter he had a goal. By the end, the reader had a definite answer whether he achieved it or not,
Right.
and that's
Right. That's actually from the it complete comes a complete circle. In fact, as you mentioned, your reading, we had a comment as well. They were praising your bookshelf, which we can see behind you.
Right, right. And these are
We can
books.
see a Murakami there.
Oh, Murakami is fantastic. And people who have to the viewers, I will say, if you have not read Murakami, you are missing out on something exceptionally beautiful in life. The reason is because, and I've written a post about this as well. One can check in my Instagram that what happens. Can I talk about this, or do you have other questions?
Definitely, definitely. It's a freewheeling conversation. Yeah, yeah.
Right. What I feel about Murakami is, and I've read other great authors as well. But Murakami is definitely right now the definitely among the top three novelists alive right now. Tell you the reason for it. The reason is that if you look at these books, they really don't have too much of a big story. Considering what we consider story, a lot of different things,
Right.
guns, somebody firing a gun, somebody getting killed, all those kind of things. Although there is death here, but the beautiful thing here is that the way he explains the emotions. So we go through life feeling many different things, but we can't pinpoint the emotion. Like sometimes, so you watch a sunset, you might think your mood has shifted, but you don't know what it has shifted to. But all those emotions remain stored in your head, you know. And when you read Murakami, he will explain it in a way that you will realize, oh my God, I felt that then. So your own emotions, which are buried inside you, which you have not been able to put a label on that, okay, this is this emotion. You will learn all of that or discover all of that when you see it. It's deeply emotional and it's fantastic. I mean, this guy is a genius. So please, I will encourage you to the viewers that please try Murakami out.
Definitely, definitely. In fact, I started a Murakami. I could not finish it, but I think this actually sums up Murakami very well.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is that unlike other books where you might miss the story totally, if you leave it in between and come back later, Murakami, you can leave and come back and you will pick up from where you was. Because what had happened when you read it was that the emotions were so strong that it connected with you.
Correct,
Things you emotionally connect with, you can never forget that easily.
right.
The thumb rule, you if the things you will forget, you never connect it with. That's the thing.
That's true. That's true. That's in fact true with our studies as well, because we
True.
don't emotionally connect to it. That we have to actually memorize them.
Yeah, exactly. That's why elders used to say that man laga ke padho.
Said
And I think that's what they used to mean that if you really are studying it with interest, you probably won't have to revise as much.
that's
We have
true.
all gone through this phase. So
So, this book has the primary storyline of cricket as we were talking about.
right.
So, how did you actually go about doing the research for the book?
Yes, I was actually unpleasantly surprised that how much I had to do a research on cricket, considering I thought of myself as an expert because I played cricket all my life, followed it very closely, and I would even now go to Cricket Info and listen to the analysis of matches and. Uh, Somebody has bowled a very good delivery of what exactly was happening, the 3D model, and I thought that is my. I know what is that there to know to be able to write something like this. But when I started writing the book, and when I coming from this backdrop of making it easy for people to read and giving them total value for their time, one of the big challenges that I had was how to describe a cricket match. Because if I go ball by ball, then I'm going to bore the readers to death. And if I don't describe at all, then there won't be any connection at all. So, uh,
Yeah.
and that's where reading a lot of cricket writing really helped me. Because that there I saw how they, in 1,000 words or so, they will talk about a match that has happened
Okay.
and be able to. So that was one. Second was reading about match fixing as well, the universe of it. Trying to actually understand why people were doing or did the things that they did. Although most of the cases we know about as cricket fans, but there's good writing
Right.
on this, which educated me about the world of the bookie and the match fixing and the history of it.
Right.
Uh, these two were the main research, which actually, as I told already, was uh, something that I really needed, but I never thought I needed till I was deep into the book and I found out
Right.
there was a gap.
Yeah, in fact, there are very minute details when there's a chapter about spot fixing. There are very specific details that are put in. So the towels and the rubbing of the balls, the very specific details. I think
Yeah,
yeah. So
uh,
that research was
yeah.
very detailed.
And just think about it. This I'm a student of cricket. I've been following. In fact, when I was in the US, at that time we didn't have the OTT players and all that. And the time difference is 12 hours. So we used to have this written commentary. Like it happens in Cricket Info
Right.
now. And Cricket Info was in its infancy at that time. I would stay up in the night to read that written commentary. Imagine that. That kind of a cricket fan I was. My father was the same as well. Very big cricket buff. Even people like us will have to educate ourselves. And it's quite humbling, when you realize this.
Yeah, for a book, actually, because you can't have plot holes, so you have to actually get into the stuff and just
Yeah,
understand it.
I did not need because you see the character was once I'd set the parameters of the character, it drove its own story. So I did not need to take inspiration from a real life cricketer or someone who has. I didn't need to because the character itself had been set up. I'd done the hard work in the beginning. But those details about the matches, etc., which uh, I was acutely aware that if I overload with cricket information, then I'm going to lose audience. Nor can I not
Yeah,
put in more, not anything at all.
yeah.
So
It's a very thin line.
yes, yes, very
Yeah. So, one thing that actually I wanted to ask you was about the title of the book.
right.
So, The Fixer, was it the title from the beginning, or
No,
did you have a completely different title, and how
complete.
did that come along?
A completely different title. In fact, the original title was End with One, which also my nephew had given me. Uh,
Okay.
and the reason why he's thought that that's the title because his thinking was that okay, life comes back a full circle. So you started at as zero and you probably ended with one, and also how the story ends with the last ball
Right.
climax and all that. So that one he was connecting from there. So I didn't have any title. I thought I'll take that, and that was the title that was pitched to the publisher. I was also thinking of other titles like Whispering Death, for example. It doesn't fit into this story, I know, but it's such a fascinating name for Michael Holding. Uh, and if you have seen Michael Holding bowl, you know that where the whispering that comes from. And I thought maybe I can connect it to the fact that something disastrous just comes without you knowing it is coming.
Correct. Correct.
But then once a book was closer to release, we asked friends what the title should be, and this is a title came about. And not only because there is match fixing in the game, but because largely, if you look at all the characters here are fixing in some way,
Correct.
and they're fixing something about themselves or about their lives, and that's where all of them are fixers. So I thought it was pretty
Right.
appropriate.
That's an interesting take because yeah, now you know mention it, I can actually see it now. Each of the primary characters was fixing something or the other.
Yes, and many of them had no reason to fix. For example, the antagonist, the billionaire cousin, is already too successful. He doesn't have to play a game at this level. But this is a
Correct.
small game for him, for a person who is so rich and who is globally recognized businessman. He had no reason to play. But that's how human nature is. If something pinches you strongly enough, you will forget your standing and your level and things like that. You will come down to playing those petty games, which is
Yeah.
not befitting you, basically.
Actually, the basic human instinct to
Yeah.
actually play the game and do that. Yeah. So Tushti is saying that she is interested to read the book now. So Tushti,
Oh,
do read
awesome!
it.
Please read. Let me know what you think. You know.
Tushti also has a publishing house, so she publishes. She does book PR, and Tushti, the review is there. Do check it out. The book's amazing.
Thank you, Siddharth.
Uh, so since we are on that topic, the book has been out for almost 3 months now.
Right.
26th January, it will be 3 months. So how has the response been?
In fact,
Did you expect this response?
I was pleasantly surprised, to be honest with you, because of course we launched in the middle of the lockdown, and we did not get a chance to like do a physical show, launch event in a bookstore. We were initially thinking of Tidal Waves in Mumbai. It's our favorite bookstore, We couldn't do that because not only that we couldn't go, but no one would come if you invite people to come, and and it would just be me standing with my book with a camera. So we did an online launch, and so that it had its own limitations. But then we couldn't wait anymore because already it was more than 1.5 years with the publisher. It was supposed to come out in March, and it got delayed because of production handles and things like that. But from then on, we are still collating sales figures. They look good. Amazon rankings, etc., are doing well as well, which is an indication. But what I'm feeling very warm about is the number of reviews I've gone from independent people who have no reason to say good things about me or the book. And one primary person in this is my father-in-law. He's 85 years old. And he loves me dearly, but he has no reason to mollycoddle or tell me things that will make me feel better, because he believes in honest feedback. He gave me a 45-minute review over a phone, over a phone, with all strategies on what to do better next time and all that. So what I'm trying to say here is that people review when they care. At least a detailed review is when they care, and when they care, it means that even if they criticize you, that also is a sign of people caring. Because criticism is absolutely fine as long as someone has read the book. So the fact that so many people who have independent people who have no reason to say good things, there has been constructive feedback as well. But I found a lot of people caring about it. And that's really warming my heart. And I know that I've done something good here. It motivates me to keep writing more.
Right. In fact, one thing I would really like to commend you on is the online publicity that the book and you and your entire team is doing. Because I saw the Instagram posts, and you have a dedicated Instagram account for the book, and you have posts and like snippets by Imtiaz Ali, and we had a couple of cricketers as well.
Right, Akash Chopra. Yes,
Akash Chopra, yeah.
And to think that I am, before this, if you go and look at my Instagram, and if you look at what I had posted before this book launch, nothing, absolutely. I just did not know what to do in social media, to be honest with you. Although, like in Facebook, I was one of the earlier members, subscribers to Facebook back in 2006, when Facebook was not even open to the whole world. It was only available to some of the bigger American universities. So I have been in social media since then, but I really couldn't figure it out beyond a point that what is it that I should talk about, which is of use to people, which comes from this thing that I can't waste people's time just putting something which goes against the whole philosophy of social media, where you're supposed to keep on producing stuff, whatever comes to your mind. So
keep on posting and threading it.
Exactly. So I had no idea really that what to put in, and I benefited a lot from handholding by our digital agency, by my wife, who is a marketing professional. I'm still early days, but I'm much more comfortable in this space now, especially Instagram, than I was before. And that
as a tool
is amazing. I mean, I think the fact that someone forces you to post a photo makes it kind of a more responsible post, as opposed to something like a Twitter, for example. I mean, I just can't understand Twitter at all. Why people, use that at all? Because the moment, and this is also, you might accuse me of that. Okay, you're a writer now. I have written a 80,000 word book, but I think anything which is a little longer to write and which takes a little effort from you, that produces good quality, in terms of.
That's true. In fact, when you are very constrained in terms of words, you can't actually write anything. Same thing happens with me when I tweet, because I am unable to actually write what I want to write in that constant space.
Yeah, and the flip side is true is that, well, because now there is you have to write less, you can just put whatever you want and get away with it.
Very specific. Yes.
Yeah, and so I think Instagram is fabulous. I think it has. I've benefited a lot from this book's promotions perspective and I see myself living on in this space, because it totally suits the way I think and the way I would like to communicate, in terms of putting something perceptive in, putting something which has got a little use to somebody. beyond me. It should be of some value to somebody. I think that's something we need to hold ourselves to.
That's true. So you mentioned, that the book was with the publisher for 1.5 years. So how was your publishing journey once you finished the story? So was Rupa your first point of contact, or did you go through an entire
No, no,
rejection approval
no, no,
process?
nothing like that. Actually, in fact, we did not choose a publisher or had a merit list of publishers per se. But because I was a first-time author, I had to, of course, pitch it to a variety of publishers because that's one of the things. It's a rite of passage for a new author, which I think it sucks for the author probably. But if you look at it from a larger perspective, the fact that the publishing process is a little difficult improves the quality of the work as well. It forces you to
That's
write in a particular way, and there's good things that one can get from it. Now I could have published this book 2 years ago on Kindle desktop publishing. But
right.
fact that I knew it is going to go in front of a publisher where very experienced editors are going to look at it, who have a much larger perspective of the publishing business and what works and what constitutes a good book, forced me to work harder. I think that's something that no writer can excuse himself or herself from. You cannot excuse yourself from the hard work person.
That's true.
And then self-publishing should be a business decision. You think that, okay, I want to control the destiny of my book and the way it comes out and that almost the full royalty, etc. That makes sense, but it should not be an excuse for not making because it's going to get lost very fast because millions of books. US itself publishes 3 million books per year. And so to answer your question, we approached a variety of publishers and everyone had their own time cycle. But Rupa is the one that was the most responsive. And they really understood very quickly what the book was about and the potential of the book. And I felt very comfortable publishing with them because just because of the fact that they got it very easily of what this is about, and since then it has been great. I mean, they have been a great team, and we have really been a great partnership so far.
Right. So that's something I have talked to multiple authors, and that's something all of them attest to. That the publishing process is something that's actually something that adds to the book itself and to the author as well.
Yeah, I mean, as an author,
Because
I think see, I've already got other careers. Of course, I want to write more books. I have to ask myself. I actually, this is what I told. It's not a prescription by any means to any author, but I always told myself that there has to be a good reason why I'm writing a book. At the least, it should satisfy me. Because you see, this as a source of making money, of course, it can become. But for that, of course, a lot of other things have to fall in place. But one cannot write thinking that, oh, I'm going to be, in 5 years, I'm going to be Chetan Bhagat or Amish or Stephen King or somebody like that. That's not the way life works. Not only writing, anything actually.
anything.
So I just had two parameters for myself. I need to have a very clear understanding of why I am writing. Because I can tell stories in other way as well. I can have great conversations with people and tell stories over a drink. I don't need to write necessarily. So second is that if it doesn't satisfy me, it is not going to satisfy other people. So that is where I really try to put in a lot of work in trying to refining the script and even training myself on how to write a book. It is different for different people, I know, but for me, it was something I had no idea about. What is the structure of a book? How is the story constructed? How do you retain interest? How do you create tension and all those kind of things? And if you look at my Kindle, it is full of writing books, which I have tremendously benefited from.
Right. Yeah, so it was a very interesting journey, in terms of writing and publishing. So this was a great learning opportunity as well. You learned about cricket, you learned about match fixing, you learned about writing.
Yeah, actually, and I also got a great amount of appreciation for other authors. As I said, I have read all my life. I read a lot of different kind of stuff, and of course, I enjoyed those books. But I never realized how difficult it is to write those things till I wrote it myself. And making a book which is of some use somewhere, so that it's going.
Right.
If you just put something out just like that, it's probably not going to reach a lot of people, and it just becomes a
That's
wasted.
true. That's true. So, if since you are a person who's done management, I will ask you one management question.
Sure.
If you had to pick a USP for the book, what would be that USP?
The USP is entertainment. And I know entertainment is something that sounds bad, or it's looked at as something that might be a little lower in quality. It's absolutely not what I'm hinting at here. What I'm trying to say is entertainment from a perspective of a very defined story goal, a promise made to the reader upfront that this is what this book is about, and taking it all the way, sticking to the premise, sticking to the promise, and delivering the promise in a satisfactory way in the end, to the extent that the reader will feel that their time was well spent. It is not meant to give a message. It's not meant to change behavior, nothing of that sort. It's a fiction book. It's a story. Anyone who is reading it is, as I said, taking off time from Netflix where they are getting entertained to read this book. So a deep personal story of a human condition which affects all of us in some way.
Right.
And that story set in this backdrop, I sure will motivate people to think of their own aspirational regret. So that's the USP, entertainment from a perspective of time well spent, following a promised story which was delivered very well towards the end.
Right. So, one thing that's very unique about the book is its structure. And I will just read out what I am hinting at. So, if you look at the index, so it's divided into 3 parts, which is awakening, desperation, and redemption. And then there are multiple chapters.
Right.
So this is something that is very interesting, and the titles are very unique and very apt to the part they're referring to.
Right.
So how did this actually come along?
Yes. This is a very interesting question from a writing or writing skill perspective, because every author has got their own idea about how big a chapter should be. I mean, many authors include multiple scenes in a chapter, and of course, the definition of a chapter needs to be logically connected. You're going to club things which are tied together into a chapter. That's the reason why you have a chapter, right?
Correct.
But then I felt that one of the things that might stop people from reading is a very long chapter, which is not ending at all. And so I made this conscious decision. Again, it's coming from to help people read this book, so that they don't give it up in between. Is to have only one scene in a chapter. That's it. Only one thing is going to happen. Very well defined.
Yeah.
In the beginning of the chapter, you will know what the goal of that scene goal is. And towards the end of that chapter, you know what has happened to that person's goal, which is the definition of a scene. A scene is by definition is that whoever is the central character of that scene comes into that scene with a particular aspiration, intention, goal. And you tell during in that chapter what has happened to that desire that he had, right? So the only one thing will happen so that it becomes easy to read one. And it also allows me to maintain the tension so that I can then end it in a way that there is something which is coming up as a result of that. And thus people will
go to the next chapter.
Will go to the next chapter. That was the thing. It was purely influenced by how I would like to read. In a sense that I've read some exceptionally thick material in my past. Authors like Salman Rushdie or Hemingway, and there's brilliant authors. I doubt if I can read those books now. I don't know why, because it's social media or our overall distracted environment we live in, or I don't know, but it is difficult for me to read those books. So how can I expect my readers to read in that way? So it was driven by that. Now the chapter names, it's interesting actually. It all happened in between writer's block. So if I was stuck in between and I did not know how to progress, I had to do something, right? I just couldn't walk away because I had committed that I'm going to put in, let's say, 4 hours in the morning to it. I did not want to feel that, hey, I promised 4 hours and I only gave two. So what would I do? I'm stuck. I can't progress. So I'll go and look at the chapter names and think that, yeah, what would sound good here? And my philosophy of a chapter name is it should not tell the obvious. What I'm meaning is, suppose your chapter is about a car chase. The chapter name should not be car chase here because that does not make sense now. But the chase is going on somewhere. Maybe it's happening in the night, or a major accident is going to happen because of it. Maybe that I can tell as a chapter name. So I can tell it as a uh, darkness of the night or darkness of Diwali. If you look at this, there's a chapter here, darkness of Diwali, where the
Yeah.
when the main darkness of Diwali is so counterintuitive as well because Diwali is anything but dark. But there is an eclipse on that day, and that's why Diwali
Yeah.
happens. So the theme of that chapter was that the character, central character Neil Upadhyay goes to his family with a great plan, a great expectation that his family will help him or support his plans, and it totally got thrown out of the window, and in a very brutal way,
Right.
right? And so there can be nothing but darkness even on that well lit night, right? So the concept of that chapter or the larger theme of that chapter becomes the the title of the chapter.
Yeah. So we have a question from Through the Tint Glasses. So the book reads like a show screenplay. Any chance of it becoming a movie or a series?
I sincerely hope so, and that it should become a show. I think it will be better off as a show than as a movie because of the fact that there is a lot of background play going on in this story in terms of there are many other characters, and the book could only do as much for some of the secondary characters because I was constricted by the 80,000, 85,000 word limit, uh,
Right.
which the publisher's instructions. But there's a lot of background story. In fact, I had originally intended this to be a two-book series, which the first book would be about Neil's journey from childhood till present moment, and then the second book from where this book starts. But then I dropped that somewhere in the second draft when I realized that two books is too much for a new author. It's probably not going to fly that well. So I've got pages and pages of backstories. I've got a lot of character sketches written about these characters, which are stories by themselves, underdeveloped here, hinted in this story, which a show over a few seasons really give us a chance to do. And there's something that uh, I was fascinated with when I was writing. There is family business here, and once I'm not thought of it in that way that okay, there is something really special about family business per se. It just came in the design somewhere. But thinking back, you know, look at the family businesses that were there at the time India became independent. Many of them are not doing that well. Many of them are pale shadow of what they are. And you are now having new age companies like the unicorns and the digital companies, or even Infosys like companies are newer companies, right? But what happened to the Birlas, for example? Okay.
Correct.
So what this show can do is that it can bring out the unique culture of family businesses, Indian run family businesses, which is what is in the story. This is a very highly functioning family business which has hit a roadblock after a glorious past. And it's on the brink of
Right.
destruction. So what destructs these family businesses? Something that we can examine in this show. So it's
To think of.
very
Agree.
very exciting, and we are in the process. Let's see how where it goes.
So this is my next question as well, and we had a similar audience question. What are you working on next after the fix up?
Right. So there are a few ideas, but what happens is many ideas go in parallel, and then suddenly one takes a lead over the other. So right now I'm very excited about this media related story that I'm working. It's early days yet, so I'm still designing it. But what I've found fascinating about the media, we all know about breaking news and the impact of social
Right.
media and things. But here I'll tell you something. I don't know whether you will agree. So when I was a kid, it was used to be difficult. I grew up in Jamshedpur. It used to be difficult to even get a magazine, properly. So it used to depend on the Doordarshan news and the newspaper, from what you could understand of a newspaper, to for your news. That's it. And magazines would come only 2 months later than its publishing date. From there, we have come now, where this is an information age. Everything is, all kinds of information is available if you want to look. And not only that, whether even if you don't look, you've been bombarded with information. But I want to make a statement here that I think we are less informed now than probably I was when I was, or generally people were 25 years ago. I'll tell you the reason. Because right now there's so much of information, much of it is in unauthenticated, fake news, propaganda, forwards, etc. That if you do a net sum of real information minus fake news minus propaganda, etc., you actually might have a net total of information lower than what used to one would get from a fully curated newspaper with a responsible editorial.
Right.
So why I'm saying this is because this is one of the things playing in my head with this story is that the illusion that we are informed, the illusion that we know what we are doing or we know what's happening in the world, it's certainly an illusion. Most people are not aware that there is an illusion, and as a result, we have not developed any ability to discern between real and fake news.
In fact, that we have seen happening because news channels have become more flashy rather than news centric. So I think that this is something that actually happens, and this would be a very interesting topic to read about.
Yeah, I'm aghast because you see, as I said, when I was a kid, I used to just wait for that magazine to come. I'm a natural reader. Right? If I go to somebody's house and if I'm not talking to someone, I'll pick up something. I'll pick up something from the desk, like a magazine or a book or something, and browse through. And the previous generation, my father's generation, they didn't even have that. But I'm telling you, my father was so well informed that anything I would ask him, he would know what I'm saying. So there is something that's happening now, which we have to be a little. We have to think about it. What's happening, and that can be a backdrop.
I agree with this point because I remember it's not that old a thing, because in school I remember we had encyclopedias, but we hardly see any encyclopedias coming out or any revisions coming out now because we are focused on Wikipedia rather than those well-researched Britannica box sets.
Yeah, exactly true. And then what is the authenticity of this thing? In a sense that, I'll tell you, like I went to my doctor's clinic a few months ago, and she was saying that there was a time when people would steal magazines from her reception room. Because people wanted to read. Well, now what happens is those magazines will just lie there gathering dust. No one will even pick them up to read here.
That's true. We are busy scrolling. We don't take it whenever it's available. That's true.
So the story around how this information overload is probably giving us a very different picture than what it exists, and setting up a character around that is probably where I'm right now. I don't know which direction it will go from.
Yeah, it will be an interesting thing to see, especially with the format of the fixer. I think this would come out really very in an interesting manner. So, when I introduced you, I mentioned two things. One was an author. Second was making gourmet coffee. I really want to know how this thing works and what's a gourmet coffee actually.
Well, I think the gourmet part is my wife has added a dramatic flavor to it, but it's just normal coffee that you get in anywhere. Yeah. But so there's a story behind this. So what happened was that as a kid, I have just, like most people in India, I grew up drinking very milky coffee. The one that is a lot of sugar, a lot of milk, and the beaten coffee that your mom used to make at home. And then when I went abroad, I got introduced to a black coffee. In fact, in Cornell, there was this glorious tradition that every day at 10 a.m., the entire school will come together to drink coffee, which is sponsored by the school. So there used to be a central place called the atrium where everyone will come, professors, staff, students, etc. It's good interaction for about 15 minutes. The problem was that there used to be two queues, one queue for the black coffee, the other queue for the milk and the sugar. So by that time you get your black coffee, it is time to go to class. So there is no no time to take. So from there I built this habit of drinking black coffee, absolutely black, no sugar, no milk. And I introduced my wife to it after I got married. That drink coffee in this way. And then of course how do you maintain this thing, because you of course the instant coffee does not work like that. So I invested into an espresso machine, a coffee bean grinder at home. So now I buy the coffee beans, I freeze them because that releases better
Yeah.
flavor. I grind it and then I brew the coffee, and that's where this thing comes. It's an essential part of my workflow. I'm
This
passionate about
this
it.
has a very calming effect as well, because when you make your entire coffee from like buying the beans to grinding the beans and then brewing it's like a meditation sort of a thing, that
Yeah,
you are
and then
actually doing it for yourself.
now when we travel, and in fact, how far the Indian coffee scene has come. There is so much of indigenous beans available in Mumbai and also down south, and various kind of plantations and various kind of coffee companies. And so I experiment quite a bit, try different kind of beans, and even when I travel abroad. Uh, there's nothing to buy from abroad nowadays which is not available in India. So you buy the coffee bean, you buy the coffee bean and carry it with you and try it out.
Yeah, so I think that you definitely have an interesting collection of coffee beans now.
Yes, exactly, and I would dare say a good knowledge about what kind of bean works where and how the grinding has to be, because that's where the whole the taste of coffee is in the grinding. That how fine will you make it? If you make it too fine, it will clog the coffee maker and you will hardly get any decantation. Or if you make it too
Okay,
coarse, you will lose a little flavor. So balancing it out, and I would like to think
balancing it out.
I would like to think it's an art.
It's definitely an art. Making coffee is definitely an art. That's for sure. Even if it's a milk coffee beaten, there is a
Yeah,
certain amount of beating that you put.
absolutely nothing against people who like milk on their coffee. But I will suggest that please try the black coffee. Once you get used to the
Definitely.
black coffee, you'll never go back to the milk and the sugar. Now
I will
I have
definitely.
a very sweet tooth. Even I can't take that sugar in that coffee anymore. It just changes the taste.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. Uh, so when you're not writing or making coffee, what do you? What are the other hobbies that you like to pursue?
So I've got an another business that I run. I have an admissions consulting business. So I help uh, clients who are applying abroad, especially to the elite universities, because I studied from one myself, so I know the process. And that is actually very aligned with my fiction writing, because and admissions, the way it's done for the foreign universities is you have to tell stories, you have to write essays, you have to tell about what your background has been, what has been the key achievements of your background, what have you learned, when did you fail, etc. And so you pretty much, my job is to pretty much enter the brain of a client and understand what his experiences are and help him fashion the right material, which is what a story is. I entered the head of a character that I created
Right.
and understood what is troubling him, and then giving a path out of that trouble, which is what fiction
Yeah,
is. So
it's a story in itself.
yeah, exactly. So these two are very similar. So that's what. And apart from that, my both my wife and I, we love traveling. Yeah, so I read a lot, travel, listen to a lot of good music, watch cricket, watch OTT shows. They feed stories as well in terms of understanding unique characters and because what I thankfully I've come to this stage where I understood a story is about a problem that a character has, and the story is a vehicle for him to try to solve that problem out of it. So,
Yeah, very nicely put. That's the entire essence of writing a story. When
yeah,
you have a
that will, I think, and if there's a budding writer here, I can tell you this is, if you can get your head around this one thing, that you make your story about a problem that that your writer that your character has, your story will be much more effective. Your job as a writer will be easier. Otherwise, what happens is that you write a lot and you work very hard, and you might. If one of the things that troubles authors is that sometimes the stories are semi-autobiographical. You are writing about an issue which is very dear to you, but you give that story to somebody else, he will not get anything at all from it, unless you fashion it in a way that makes sense to for them, and they can care for it.
Right. That's very nicely put. You have to make the reader care about the character. Otherwise, you definitely lose interest.
Yeah, that's what the problem with your writing your own stories are. That if you write your own story, it is so close to you. You are very attached to it, right? Then you are not the right judge of whether that story, or at least told in that way, is of interest to somebody else.
Of interest to someone.
So better is to think what is of interest to somebody else, and write it that way. Even if it's your story, write it in that way. Make a very well defined problem for the character, and solving that problem is a story, really.
Right. So that was a very interesting conversation.
Thank you.
It was great having you, and I was very fortunate to get this book to read, The Fixer, and I love the story, and I did review it, I think, couple of months back.
Thank you very much, Siddhant. I really appreciate your kind words in the review.
And thank you for this book. And especially, I think it came out very close to IPL as well.
That's right.
This edition.
Right.
Yeah, there was 15-20 days gap, I think, and
right.
it just plugged into that season. So
yeah, I think both from the perspective of the story and the tournament itself, because the situation, definitely, the atmosphere had become so gloomy with the lockdown and all that you needed that release. And I would even if I made a small contribution to helping somebody having a good time by reading this book, I think the time was well served in writing it.
So thank you for joining, and
thanks a lot, Siddhant.
It was a pleasure having you, and I would love to see your second book coming out and hosting you again. And
thanks a lot, Siddhant. I hope that I keep writing with better quality. And I want to tell the viewers that I don't take you for granted at all. And I've told this multiple times in this interview as well. I don't take the reader's time for granted, because I do not like when someone takes my time for granted. Even if I see a show which fizzles out in the end and it does something else, I feel cheated, because time is limited. So
time is limited, correct. Yeah. So thank you for joining in. It was a pleasure having you, and just thank you for the book as well. The story was superb, and
thank you, Siddhant.
I hope to see you again. Do follow sir on Suman Dubey, and the book has its own Instagram handle called Fixer the Book. Follow that handle for some very interesting updates. So thank you.
And I'm going to be posting a lot about my writing processes as well going forward. So
great. So writers who are watching this, do tune in, and you will get a lot of tips as well.
Thanks a lot, Siddhant. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Take care. Good. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. So thank you guys for joining. This was a wonderful session with Suman Dubey, the author of The Fixer. My book review is up on my Instagram live and all my other social media handles. I have also done a video review of the book, which is up on YouTube and all other handles. Do check it out. Do check out the book. The book has its Instagram handle at The Fixer the Book. Check out the caption for the details. Thank you for joining.